The Kingdom of My Divine Will in the Midst of Creatures. Book of Heaven, Volume 32, Part 4. April 23rd, 1933. How the life of Jesus was a continuous abandonment in the hands of the Father. One who lives in the divine will never interrupts her journey. Example of the clock. The soul takes heaven in her power and storms it. I continued to think about the pains of my passionate Jesus, and as I reached the last breath of his life, I heard, resounding in the depth of my heart, "Into your hands, O Father, I commend my spirit." It was the most sublime lesson for me, the calling of my whole being into the hands of God, the full abandonment into his paternal arms. And while my mind wandered amid many reflections, my suffering Jesus, visiting my little soul, told me, "My blessed daughter, my life down here, as it began, so it ended. From the first instant of my conception, it was a continued act of mine. I can say that in each instant I placed myself in the hands of my celestial Father. This was the most beautiful homage that his Son gave him, the adoration most profound, the sacrifice most heroic and complete, the love of sonship most intense that I gave him. My full abandonment in his hands rendered my humanity speaking, and with authoritative voice, asking for everything and obtaining everything I wanted. To a son of his, abandoned in his arms, nothing could my celestial Father deny. My abandonment of each instant was the act most pleasing, so much so that I wanted to crown the last breath of my life with the words, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." The virtue of abandonment is the greatest virtue. It is to commit God to taking care of the one who is abandoned in his arms. Abandonment says to God, "I don't want to know anything of myself. This life of mine is yours, not mine, and yours is mine. Therefore, if you want to obtain everything, if you really want to love me, live abandoned in my arms. Let me hear the echo of each instant of my life. Into your hands I abandon the whole of myself, and I will carry you in my arms as the dearest of my daughters." After this, I was following everything that the divine will has done, and I felt an order in me, one after the other, and I was supposed to follow them. There's a footnote here with regards to the word them. Them refers to the acts of the divine will. Let's begin the sentence again. After this, I was following everything that the divine will has done, and I felt an order in me, one after the other, and I was supposed to follow the acts of the divine will. So I remained surprised And my sweet Jesus added, "My little daughter of my will, you must know that one who does my divine will and lives in it cannot do without keeping ever present to her all the acts done by it, because my will holds everything within itself, and everything it has done always in act. Therefore it is no wonder that in the soul in whom it reigns, it holds all of its acts with all the order it kept in creating them, and the creature, with all ease, follows them one by one, to unite herself with it, as though wanting to do what my own will did. If she is together with it, how can she abstain from doing what it does, and from placing into the field of action, identified with it, her little love, her adoration, her thank you, her attentions and wonderments at work so great? Even more, you must know that my will winds the soul up, and she offers herself to receive it. All our works are caught in this winding, and the soul, following the winding, follows and becomes aware of all our works. It happens as to a clock. If it is winded, it moves its little wheels. It marks the minutes, the hours, and the one who possesses it has the good of knowing all the hours of the day. But if it is not winded, the clock does not mark anything. It is as if it had no life, and the one who possesses it does not have the good of knowing the distinct hours of the day. Now, we can call one who lets our will reign, our clock, who, being winded, marks the minutes and the hours of our works, and has the good of remaining aware of the hours of the day of our divine will. Now, if one winds the clock, it moves until the winding is exhausted, nor does it interrupt its journey. In the same way, the soul, if she receives the winding of my will, must do her journey. And if she wanted to stop, she cannot, because the winding moves the little wheels of her soul, and makes her go forward in the great day of the hours of our works. Therefore be attentive to receive the good of this divine winding, if you want to know the hours of the day of the supreme Fiat. More so, since when the soul disposes herself to do my will and to follow it, all the things it has done compete in order to enter into that act. In fact, being a single act, it does not have detached acts, and therefore everything it did in the order of creation, of redemption, in the angels, in the saints, it encloses everything in the work of the creature that operates in it. Because if it gives itself, it does not give itself by half, but in its entirety. And just as the sun, if it gives itself to the earth, does not give half of itself, but the whole of itself, with the fullness of its light, and because of this, marvels take place on the face of the earth. The same with my will. If the creature calls it as life into her acts, it gives itself with all the fullness of its light, sanctity, power, and works. If it did not carry everything, It would be like entering into the creature and into her acts, like a king without cortege, without an army, without creative power, and therefore like keeping the wonders that we can perform as though inoperative. Ah, no, no. One who operates in our will must be able to say, I take heaven in my power, I storm heaven, and I enclose it into my act. Fiat. April 29th, 1933. One who does the human will takes earth, and one who does the divine takes heaven. How Jesus knows how to do all arts. Delight he takes in working. How the creature is the noble princess who descends from the height of heaven. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues. I feel that for me, the living in it is an extreme necessity, and if I did not do it, I would feel the ground missing under my feet, the heavens missing over my head, the air to breathe, the sun that illumines me and warms me, the food that nourishes me. So how could I live? And if I lived, what an unhappy life would mine be! My God, free me from living even just one instant outside of your will. But while I was thinking this, my always lovable Jesus, making me his short little visit, told me, my daughter, to live outside of my divine will is to live without the connection with the divine life, separated from heaven, as if one had no friendship, knowledge, or relationship with her celestial Father. It can be said that while she knows that she has her Father, yet she does not know him. She lives as though far away, and therefore she does not partake in his divine goods. More so, since for each act of human will that she does, she keeps collecting earth, and earth is what she knows and loves, and she partakes of the unhappinesses produced by what is earthly, which she keeps acquiring with her human acts. So the human will without the connection with the divine knows how to produce much earth, sowing passions, thorns, sins, and collecting miseries, sadnesses, which embitter her life. Each act of human will does nothing other than take a little bit of earth, while for each act of my will that she does, the creature loses the human ground and acquires the ground of heaven. Therefore, for each act of divine will that she keeps on doing, she takes heaven, and she keeps expanding her celestial properties. And I myself administer to her the sowing, and making myself the celestial farmer, I sow together with her the most beautiful virtues, and there I form my dwelling, my refuge, my delights. And I find no difference between being in heaven, together with the saints in the celestial regions, and being in the heaven of this creature. Or rather, I take more delight in being in the heaven of the human will on earth, because in it I have work to do, in order to expand this heaven even more, so I can make new gains, receive new love. Though it is sacrifice, work has the virtue of producing new inventions, new beauties, new arts. It is from work that the most astounding things arise, the highest and deepest sciences. And I, knowing much about all arts and all sciences, work in this heaven, and in it I form the most beautiful works, the inventions most artistic and new, and I communicate the highest and deepest sciences. So now I make myself teacher, and I teach the most sublime sciences. Now artisan, and I form living statues in this heaven. Now I act as farmer, and my creative hands change and transform the little ground of the creature into a heaven. I take so much pleasure in using all arts, and I amuse myself so much, that now I do one work, now another, and now I invent new things. And novelties always bring more pleasure, more delight, and more glory. And these terrestrial heavens will also serve as new surprise and contentment for the whole celestial court. Wherever my divine will reigns as life in the creature, I can do anything. She becomes the raw material in my hands to be able to carry out my divine works. And being able to work is the thing most pleasing to me. It is the sweetest rest. It seems that work and rest alternate. Now, in heaven, in my celestial fatherland, there are no works, either on my part or on the part of creatures. One who enters into those celestial regions places her enough and says to herself, "My work is over. What I have done, I have done. Nor can I add even one more comma to my work, to my sanctity. And I cannot make new conquests in their souls, because death says confirmation, nor can they take one more step forward. So there are no works in the celestial fatherland, but everything is triumph and glory. I can say that the whole display that I make, of giving new joys, new happinesses, and continued beatitudes, with which I keep the whole of heaven enraptured, is all on my part. But in them I cannot acquire anything more. This is why I like more these terrestrial heavens of the human will, because the conquests, the works, the delights that I find in them cannot be there, where everything is triumph and glory, not even in the regions of my divine fatherland. Therefore, be attentive and never go out of my will, and I promise you never to interrupt my divine works in your soul." Then I continued to think about the great good that the divine will brings to the creature, and my sovereign Jesus added, "My blessed daughter, you must know that our love and ardent desire to keep the creature together with us is so great that as soon as she is created, We assign to her the royal place in our divine will. So each creature has her place of honor in our divine royal palace. Therefore, her beginning, her first act of life, both in eternity and in time, is in our Fiat. She was not there in the world, and we loved her, and longing for her, we not only gave her her place, but placed our love, our sanctity, our power, light, and beauty as cortege around her. She is the noble princess that descends from the height of the heavens to cross the exile. But our will does not leave her. It descends together with her. It presses itself around her. It crosses the exile together with her. In each act that she does, in the pains, joys, or encounters, it places its prime divine act, that she may maintain her nobility and her state of princess. And once it has filled her with all goods, to the point of having no more space in which to place more goods, it takes her up to heaven again, to the heights of the spheres, and as though triumphant, it points her out to the whole celestial court. Here is what my divine will wants to do, and knows how to do in the creature. But, to our sorrow, we see that as she descends into the exile, she no longer thinks about her royal palace, or about the nobility of her origin, and she would want to slip away from our will, which, more than tender mother, carries her clasped in her arms, and making use of the doors of the senses that we gave her, she descends unto the lowest ground of her human will. We had given these doors in order for her to ascend back to us, so that she might make her little escapes from the exile into the bosom of her Creator. But she makes use of them to make her little escapes into miseries, weaknesses, passions, which disennoble her to the point that she can no longer be recognized as the princess of heaven, but as the servant of the earth. But in spite of this, we do not close our doors to her, which are our love, our paternal goodness, our compassionate mercy, our waiting for her. And as soon as we see that she closes her doors to come into our will, we go toward her. We open wide our doors, and gazing upon her, from beautiful to ugly, with the garment of princess torn and dirty, we do not make it a reproach for her, but with compassion all paternal, we say to her, "Where have you been? Poor daughter, how you have reduced yourself! Did you see how much evil you have done by living at the low ground of your human will, disunited from ours? You have walked without guidance, without light, without food, without defense. Therefore, don't do it anymore, so that as we take you back, you may make up for the good lost. We know that the creature without our divine will can do no good. It is as if she wanted to see without eyes, walk without feet, live without food. Therefore, be attentive, never to go out of my divine will, if you want to find strength, light, support, and your very Jesus at your disposal. Fiat. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 32, Part 4. Fiat.